So do you know the story of Ulysses and the Sirens? I mean, I guess if you clicked on this link, you must be, right? It's an ancient tale out of Homer's book, the Odyssey. And for me, I was curious if there were any biblical parallels to it. Essentially, my question is this. Would the Bible say that Ulysses' strategy was a good way to deal with temptation or not? So this video is basically my exploration of that question. Hi, I'm Todd. Thanks for joining me today. And so let's make sure we're on the same page here. I'll give you a quick recap of Ulysses' story. I'll put a timestamp in here if you want to skip ahead after this part. So the story goes like this. There are these two islands, and they are occupied by sirens, who are beautiful women that sing an enchanted song. Ulysses has to navigate between these two islands, but he knows that everybody who has sailed between them, well, they hear the enchanted song, it takes over their minds, and then the sirens cause the crew to sail a ship into the rocks, and they all die. So the sirens are beautiful, they sing enchanted music, but they kill you. So in this way, they really are a great metaphor for evil, because it's attractive, it's enticing, and very pleasurable, but it will destroy you. So Ulysses has this great idea. Since he knows he has to sail through this passageway, he has a plan to fill everybody's ears with wax. But he decides to have himself tied to the ship's mast. That way he can't change the course of the ship. The crew will do everything they're supposed to because they're not going to have their minds taken over by the sirens and their enchanted music. And basically everything will be fine. With one special bonus. Ulysses is going to get to hear the enchanted music and live. So as far as he's concerned, it's a win-win. Now this plan works. They sail through the passageway and he gets to indulge and hear the enchanted music, and they all can live to tell the tale. Now modern psychology would call this strategy of tying himself to the mast a commitment device. Ulysses committed himself to win. He forced himself to succeed in this temptation. And so that brings us back to the question, is there a biblical parallel? Is there anything that we can think of in the Bible where this story matches up to some of these elements? So let's start by looking at the Old Testament. There are plenty of examples of people going through a temptation, right? Eve is tempted and fails. And there are plenty of stories where people give into temptation, but that's not really what we're looking for. We're not looking for a situation where somebody fails because Ulysses doesn't actually commit the act. So what if we look for people who didn't give into temptation? Joseph of the Old Testament is tempted by Potiphar's wife, and his solution is to flee the sex situation when she comes on to him. But this isn't like Ulysses either, right? Because Joseph doesn't indulge in a makeout session with her and head out after, say, rounding third base. Ulysses manages to enjoy the pleasure of the temptation, of basking in the sight of the sirens and hearing the enchanted music, while at the same time preventing himself from actually succumbing to it. He's managed to basically cheat the system and have it both ways. And Joseph, well, he doesn't do that. If we switch gears and look at Jesus, when he's in temptation, he doesn't indulge in it either. He prays, he fasts, and I think most importantly, he fights the devil with scriptures. There's a real parallel here with Moses and Pharaoh, and really a parallel with all the Old Testament battles. We have to fight when evil is trying to oppress us. And as a result, Jesus fights temptation as well. And the key is that he doesn't bathe in the pleasure of the temptation while not technically doing it. So, where's our example? Well, if we look at the entire Bible, I think the closest person to Ulysses is actually Samson. Samson is tempted by Delilah, and he marries her. Samson figures he has the willpower to have the woman he wants, but not give in to her desires. Now, he's successful in resisting her for a while, but the Bible says he basically gives in to her because she nags him to death, and then he reveals the secret to his strength. Yeah, it takes some time, but the story is clear. Unlike Ulysses, Samson loses his battle. And so what I take from this is that the Bible doesn't really teach us that Ulysses' method is a good one, even though it prevents his death and those of his shipmates. So, why? So why is Ulysses' method not endorsed by the Bible, even though it gets results? Well, the way I see it is that it gets to the matter of our heart. And I think Paul says it well in Romans, because he writes, "But he is a Jew who is one inwardly, and the circumcision is that of the heart, in the spirit, not in the letter." Now we're given a similar message in the Psalms. We see, "Create in me a clean heart, O God, and put a new and right spirit within me." God's goal isn't for us to just dance on the edge of evil while still refraining from it. The problem with Ulysses is that he still enjoys the enchanted music of the Sirens. His heart has not been transformed by the experience. It's like he spends time at the strip clubs, but claims he's not committing adultery. Jesus is quite clear, though, that just looking at a woman lustfully is committing adultery in your heart. This is why Ulysses' journey is not modeled in the Bible. Instead, both the Old and the New Testaments are telling us that we have to be born again with a new heart. Why? Because just counting on sheer willpower isn't going to do it. It's just not. And yes, I know some people have an iron will, and they may not actually do it. But the goal isn't to just not do it. The goal is to get to a place where we're not just refraining from something we love, but to actually not even want to do it. And ultimately, getting to a place where we want to do what God says. Ulysses' commitment device doesn't really give him progress down this path. Now, I'm not saying that I'm perfect and I have made it to this heavenly place in my own life, but I know what I'm striving for, and it's striving to not want to do evil. And while I may not be there yet, Lord, I am trying. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. If you enjoyed this, leave a comment or a like or something, because, I can't see your face. I don't know what you think of this unless you tell me. So I appreciate it. If you feel like subscribing, that's great too. Yeah. All the best to you on your journey, and God bless.